For good access when you're fading, a good idea is to loop your client's mask over the ear like that. Now I need to establish my first line for my fade. I want it quite low. If I go too high and I have it maybe say like up around the parietal ridge, then I'm going to give myself quite a short space to fade in. I want a great big space for fading so that I have a nice gradient going up gradually. Let me show you where I'm going to put this first line. I'm going to mark it out just above the ear. I'll make a similar line on the other side of the head and it'll form a point at the back of the head. This is just so that I can have a methodical way of working. I'm not going to leave it as a point. You'll see shortly what I'm going to do with that. But for me, a good way to keep it symmetrical is to make my two lines, bring them into a point and then clear the whole area. So just using my Andis T outliner, I'm just going to clear all this hair. I don't need it. This is the area that I'm going to be using my foil shaver on. When you get to the ear area, this is where it really helps to have a T blade because you can just get into those difficult angles with the corner of the trimmer. Be careful not to go above that line that you just made. So take your time, work slowly. You see I'm in no rush here, I work fairly slowly. Make sure that you have this area really well cleared of any uncut hair. This is going to be quite important for when we bring the foil shaver out and foil shave this area. I'm going to remove the point now by making a line just below the occipital bone. That's the bone that sticks out at the back of your head. It does join to other bones, and if you go higher it means that you don't have to deal with any dark patches around those bones, but I want my fade to stretch, so I'm making my line below the occipital bone. And then just again make sure it's very clean and there's no uncut hair. When you're foil shaving, you really want to be using this type of foil shaver, not one of the foil shavers that has the rotary blades, the type with the 3 heads or 2 heads that spin. We want these. This type of foil shaver has a bar in the middle which presses against the foils and trims any hair that sticks through the gold foil. So what I'm doing now is I'm just clearing all the hair on that area that I cut right down to skin. Now a good way to work with a foil shaver is to work in little circles. Why would you work in circles? The reason I like to work in circles is because I'm aware that some hair can stick out of the follicle in different directions. So by going in little circles, it ensures that you get absolutely everything cut right down to the shortest length possible. So remember that tip, work in little circles. It may seem strange that I said don't use the foil shaver with the discs that spin and then you see me making little circles, but the reason for that will become clear later on in this cut. Now that we've covered that whole area, we need to get on with doing the fade, and my way of doing this is to work up the way. I'm going to use my shortest blade, that's the finest, shortest blade, which is on my T outliner, and I'm going to make a line about 2 to 3 millimeters higher than my previous line. All that's going to give me is a very small thin line of stubble which you can barely see. When I work my way around to the back, I'm going to actually make it slightly higher. This is because I've got more room for fading at the back. Just make sure your line's nice and straight and nice and clean. In my opinion, if you're going to be doing anything like a skin fade, then you have to have a foil shaver or an open razor, but I would recommend a foil shaver because it's safer and cleaner. And for me, a zero gap blade or a T outliner. Now I love this T outliner. Some people use the wall detailer, but what I'll do is I'll leave links in the description for the tools that I use. For me, I wouldn't work without the tools that I use. I've been working in the industry for 17 years and these are the best tools that I've ever worked with. So if you are fading and you're wondering, why can I not get rid of these lines? I can't seem to get them out. Well, it's to do with the blade that you're using or the equipment that you're using. Now I'm going to use my Wall Senior with a closed blade. This is going to give me a line of stubble that's just slightly longer than what the T outliner would give me. It's very fine and it's hard for the eye to see, but it is happening. So I'm just going up once again about 2 to 3 millimeters higher, and I'm staying this time on the same side of the head. I'm not going to work all the way around. Once I've created that line, I'm going to use the lever, not open, not closed, but somewhere bang in the middle. That's going to give me just a slightly longer stubble once again. So this is the third layer of stubble, getting longer as we move up, that I'm going to create. And as you can see, it's not difficult this. I just follow the same line and I go up another 2 to 3 millimeters each time. Whenever I'm doing a fade, I have the clipper in one hand and I have a fade brush in my other hand. At any given time, I want to brush hair debris out of the way so I can see how my fade is looking. Fade brushes are really important, so always make sure you've got your fade brush when you're working. What next? Well, you guessed it. Another line of stubble, just slightly longer than the last one again. I'm going to move my lever to fully open now, and I'm going to work my way from front to back with the lever fully open. Again, I'm only going up about 2 to 3 millimeters. Now, you'll notice at the front that the hair slightly drops down at the temple. I'm leaving it that way, and I'm going to show you why as this cut progresses. Hey, have you ever thought about holding lots of tools in your hand like this? Now I've got my number 1 guard on, and I've closed the blade. And guess what? We're going up a further 3 to 4 millimeters, maybe even a centimeter. It depends on the head that you're working on. But if you look in front of you, you can see that this is really progressing into a fade now. We've gone from skin down beside the ear, and as we get up to the parietal ridge, there's stubble beginning to form a nice gradient into the longer hair. So I'm going to keep working my way up here, and I'm going to brush it, keep it nice and clean, and when I'm working up the side of the head, I'm going to be very careful not to round over the parietal ridge. That's the ridge that bulges out at the side of your head. I've spoken about it in other videos, but this is the bone here that causes that ridge. The parietal ridge is one of the key areas you need to consider when you're cutting hair. Now I'm just going to extend my blade so that I've got a 1.5 guard, and I'm going to really kind of remove this bulk here. This is a little bit of a roughing out process. Don't worry if it's not too refined on this area right at the moment. We're going to refine it once the bulk has been removed. I want you to pay attention to just how slow I'm working here. It's not a rush. Work slowly with your clipper, watch what you're doing, and remember, that parietal ridge, don't round over the top with the clipper. I'm going to speed up the video a little bit here because I want to take you to a problem that's arisen, and I want to show you exactly what it looks like and how we're going to deal with it. I can show you with my comb exactly where it is. You can see here that after I've done my 1.5, there's a little bit of a dark line. I've gone from a 1 straight to a 1.5. What I really need is something in between, because the jump on this dark hair has been too much. So I'm going to go in with a 1 and the lever in the halfway position. This is the beginning of me starting to refine this side of the fade. Now you will remember I did say you stay on the same side until it's complete. Something I'd recommend is don't look at the teeth of the clipper guard, look at the blade and where the blade touches the hair. Now here's the thing, a half guard, a 1.5 mil guard. So I'm going to put that on so that I can refine this side a little bit more. I don't want to go quite as high as I went with my 1. I just feel that there's some lines here, some dark patches that I need to work on to try and get rid of them. Interestingly though, you can still cut to the same length of hair as the half guard if you take the guard off and push the lever so that the bottom blade is all the way forwards. I find sometimes using metal teeth and not plastic picks up the hair better. This might look finished to some people, but this is far from complete for me. Now I'm going to do the other side, and the process for this side is exactly the same as the first. If you need a refresher, just watch back all the techniques in the first part of the video. Once I've got both sides completed, we now need to address the back and this area on the occipital bone. So if you remember, I already put in a little line of stubble with my T-outliner. Now I'm going to put in another line of stubble with my closed blade, and you can see I'm just nibbling in, I'm just moving up slightly before I extend the guard to 1/4. That's the halfway position between the half and the closed blade. And I'm just going to go up slightly higher again. Well, you know my methods. Now I'm going to do a half, and I'm going to go up slightly higher again. It's pretty straightforward this. Every time we move higher, you just make the blade slightly longer. One thing to watch out for here, and you can get this with the scalp sometimes, is that the scalp can be quite loose on the head and it moves around. You may even just have a light pressure on the clipper, but the scalp moves a lot. You may need to lighten the pressure even more. You can see in this cut that the scalp is moving quite a lot when I touch it with the clipper. I've got to watch because I know what I want to cut, but when the scalp moves, the hair goes in a different place. So I have to be careful to work in small motions. While we're on the occipital bone, I can't stress enough how important this particular part of the head is for your overall finish and your overall cut. You'll notice that when I'm cutting, I don't go up and over the occipital bone with the clipper. The clipper goes up and just comes straight off the occipital bone in an upwards motion. It doesn't go round and take that weight away from above. We really need that. The crown's very important. Don't get caught in the trap of thinking, if I obliterate the crown and take it short, then that'll make my life easier. We need the crown. It's very important for head shape and for your overall finish. Throughout your haircut at various points, I would recommend that you take a step back and have a look at your haircut. Maybe even stand a few meters away and have a look. I'm back with my half guard now, and I'm going to start refining this. I'm not going to go as high as I did with my one, but I'm just going to run into this dark area here. When you're doing the refining process, you don't just go straight up with the clipper. You would maybe go up, you'd maybe use the corner of the clipper or go sideways, as long as you don't go higher than the actual length of the grade that you're using. If you remember earlier, I was working with a half guard, but I took it off and pushed the blade forward so that I was still working with a half, but metal instead of plastic. Sometimes I just prefer metal to plastic, and this dark area that I couldn't get rid of, I can get rid of using a metal blade. To further fine tune it, I'm going to close the blade and I'm going to pick away with the corner of the clipper. This allows me to pick away little dark patches and even just individual hairs. Sometimes one hair can ruin a fade. When it comes to fine tuning a fade, you can use all the techniques that I've shown you, but what's going to happen is the inner artist in you is going to have to come out. You're going to have to use your own eyes and your own mind and make your own decisions to decide how the particular head that you're working on can be faded better. Now, around this area here, the occipital bone, there's often lots of joins in the bones of the head that can cause little bumps. And this is where versatility and creativeness and experience can go a long way to producing a good fade. But it's up to you. If you see a dark patch, then you work on it until it's gone. Let's get some definition on this fade now. This area here, some people call it a C-cup, some people call it a hook, but it's one of the few areas on a skin fade that you can get some kind of definition and you can put a bold line in. It really makes a fade pop. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use the corner of the T-outliner and I'm just going to form a little hook. Now don't go too far inside the hairline here. Maybe 1 or 2 hairs inside the hairline. It's going to look unnatural if you go too far inside the hairline. If your client's getting faded weekly, you could get away with going further inside the hairline. So you can see I'm just picking out, I want to get every single hair with the T-outliner and then I'm going to refine it with the razor. I'm using an exposed blade shavette, so the blade on this sticks out slightly further than it would on a normal shavette. I'll apply a little bit of shaving gel to the area. First of all, I'm going to just shave around all my lines using the corner of the blade. Very carefully, I don't want to destroy my good work. One way to really make this hook pop is to go against the grain and just take out those tiny little bits of stubble around it. Most people wouldn't be able to see it. Your client may not even see it in the mirror, but getting rid of it is going to make a difference. But you see how this now looks a little more defined around that hook area. I did say that there was going to be a technique with the foil shaver that you can't do with those rotary shavers. This is a technique I use which I call dabbing down. It's where you make downward strokes with the foil shaver just to remove any kind of line that you may have struggled to get rid of with your detailer. Very often there isn't a line, but I find that this can soften the fade just at the point where the skin begins to turn into stubble. This is a great technique. If you've not used it, I really recommend that you try it. It's worth trying, and in some cuts is very, very useful. I'm finishing this cut with a bit of Hair Bond Texturizer Sea Salt Spray. I really like salt spray because it gives me a really dry finish in the hair and it can create some lovely textures, really nice texture. I'd love to know what you're using at home. Do you use a dry product? Do you use a wet product? Do you like a firm hold or some flexibility in the hair? Personally, I've tried hundreds of products over the years and I've whittled it down to just a handful of products that I really like, and they do exactly what I want. You can see here that I'm using a diffuser to dry this off. The diffuser just spreads the air out so that the force of the hairdryer doesn't flatten the hair down. I want a little bit of volume. You can see how I'm finishing it here, and I'm rubbing my fingers all over it. Don't be afraid to lift the crown a little bit. Some people try to get their crown to lay flat, but it gives you a better head shape sometimes if you style with the crown. If you've got any questions about anything that you've seen in this video, drop them in the comments below. Tell me what you think about the haircut. Is it something you would have yourself, or do you want to learn how to do this on somebody else? Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And finally, please share this to anybody you think would find it useful. Until next time, my name's Michael Home. I've been the 1 Minute Barber. Thank you so much for watching.